Okay, how's the volume of your headphones?
Say something again.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, that's a touch higher.
Okay, so closer to me. Look over at me. Look on this side of the orange thing.
Okay.
Count to 10 and adjust the volume.
1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Yeah, that's.
Got it the way I like it?
Yeah, that's a little better. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I can hear it good.
All right, now. Okay, so Twitch has accepted the stream. YouTube has accepted the stream. Facebook has accepted the stream. I'm asking Facebook to give me the link. Waiting for the link. Facebook has given me the link. I'm sending you the link now.
Okay.
You should see the link in Facebook Messenger.
Okay. Let me bring that up on the computer here.
Yeah, you just go to Facebook and you log in.
Okay. I have to do that on my phone because I don't know what my password is.
Most people don't.
Okay. Okay, I clicked on the link. Okay.
Oh, you're going to do it through your phone. Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to have to because I don't know what the password is yet.
So are you shared with people now?
Password is yeah. No. Okay. 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 It should be good.
Are you ready to start your show?
Yeah.
On the screen, there's a timer. And it says 5. When it says on the air, you're on the air, okay?
Okay.
Watch the timer.
Hello everybody. This is Daufhin. I'm back again with episode 2 of my podcast, and it's titled "That Show of Mine." And going forward, that should be the title. I've settled on that, so that's what it's going to be. And this is show number 2. My topic tonight, I was thinking just something to start it off with. Last podcast was just basically a meet and greet with everybody out there. So I thought I'd start with the actual topics going forward, on most weeks anyways. And the one I chose first to start off my second episode is a topic that is very much a part of who I am and part of my life. The topic for this hour is ghosts and the paranormal. Now, I know a lot of people have different thoughts on the subject of the paranormal. I found a few interesting things online when I was doing some research for this. In particular, now this is according to YouGov.com in 2021. 2 in 5, that's 40% of Americans say ghosts are real. 1 in 5, 20%, say they have encountered one themselves. Women are more likely to believe in ghosts, 50% to 31%. And also demons, oddly enough, 48% to 38% than men. Also, it's kind of funny, 8% of Americans believe vampires exist, 9% believe werewolves exist, and 31% say supernatural beings do exist. And 11% say they've actually personally encountered a demon. All right, so that's the statistics as of 2021. Now, personally, I mentioned this is a big part of my life, and basically most of my life I've experienced paranormal events. You could say I was born into it because when I grew up in near Elkhorn, Wisconsin, Walworth County. Now, I moved away from there in 1980, but Elkhorn and Walworth County in particular are notorious. I'm sure some of you have heard of the Beast of Bray Road. Well, that was in Walworth County and just outside of Elkhorn on Bray Road, which is right in the neighborhood in the backyard of where I was born and lived for my first 8 years or so of my life. Now, the Beast of Bray Road wasn't first sighted until like the 90s, and we moved away in like 1980, so this was far after I lived there, but it's kind of emblematic of that area. It's kind of a weird area. And the house I grew up in, that my parents lived in and my sister lived in and I lived in as I was born, was this big farmhouse on County Trunk H, I believe, near Elkhorn. And it was one of these old farmhouses from like the 1800s. And it was very, very much haunted. And there was a lot of things that went on when I was a kid. And only some of them I'm kind of privy to because I was so young. But my mother later on had told me a lot about this stuff. So I had some insight into it as I grew older. And my parents were into the occult as well during that time. And along with a group of friends and neighbors, they would get together and hold seances in our kitchen with a Ouija board and the whole bit. And so they were really, playing with the dark stuff. And during one session, I guess, there was this entity that they contacted who told them about that there was a murder that took place that was connected to our house. Didn't give a lot of details, but just kind of said basically that. And so my parents were intrigued enough that they went and researched this with like the county records and stuff like that. And turned out it was actually true that in the early 1900s, in our house, there was a man was living there with he had a young daughter who lived there as well. And the story was that he had caught his daughter with the stable hand, the hired stable hand. And I'm not sure if he had gotten the daughter pregnant or if he had just caught them in the act, but he was furious enough where he murdered both the stable hand and his own daughter, and then fled. We found out he was like a fugitive for a number of years. They actually caught him in Oregon, and he was hanged for his crimes in 1908. But you can imagine like that house and being connected to that. There's a lot of really frightening stuff going on. Stuff I was thankfully too young to really know a lot about, but I was scared enough of the dark during that time that I was scared to be in my room at dark. I remember that. Growing up, I always had to fear the dark, and it stemmed from stuff in that house. My parents were frightened as well, and about the time I was born, they stopped the seances and they burned the Ouija board they had. But the activity still continued up until like the time we actually moved. I remember them telling me a story about a neighbor named Christine who was part of the group, and there was activity that in her house that had started. One of the entities apparently became fixated on her, and a couple of things that I was told she was dealing with was not only having like voices and seeing things out of the corner of her eye, but there was times when things would move in her house. And the one in particular, they told me about how she had like a bulletin board, and like the papers would spin on the tacks. And there's another instance where she was like ironing, and the cord to the iron started coiling like a snake and tried to wrap around her leg. Those are the two things I remember they told me about. But that house got to be such an issue for my parents. It was partially why we moved when we did when I was 8 years old. It just got to be too much. So we moved to mostly across the state. That was like in the southeastern part of Wisconsin. We moved in the southwestern part of Wisconsin and bought 50 acres of land, and my parents built a house from scratch. And this was not kind of a haphazard thing. My parents were really concerned about moving into a place with more activity, so they made it a point of just buying land and building a house from scratch, which my dad and his friends did. He built this whole house like themselves with him and his friends. It was pretty amazing. But I remember when we did move in, or we're about to move in, it was like a moving day. We're all down there. My mother wanted to walk through the house and get a feel for it. Because my mom was very intuitive, and she had a lot of I guess really psychic gifts. There was a story that my dad had told me about that my mother and a certain friend of theirs, with the two of them, could levitate like small objects just by using their concentration. know, she could only do that with this one particular friend who she was tuned in with. And she couldn't do it on her own. It was just the two of them together. But my dad had described this, that he had seen on numerous occasions where they could just levitate little small objects, like stuff that's relatively light, but it was definitely a few inches like off the surface. And so we moved into this house, and although my mother always insisted it was okay, I don't know. In hindsight, I think she was probably just trying to protect us. But I was terrified of the house, like always. I insisted to sleep with the closet light on, and my my parents had their room in a loft above the first floor, but it was one of those floors where it was like a half floor where you had stairs going up to the loft, but it overlooked like the first floor. And that was the living room, the area overlooked, and we had a couch there. And there's many nights where I slept on that couch because I was too scared to sleep in my room. But I never really knew why. I just knew I had this fear. And then when I was 13 years old, my sister and I saw an apparition in the house. It was absolutely no warning, nothing leading up to it that was out of the ordinary. But we were in the basement just kind of messing around, playing and stuff. And the basement had these stairs that led up to the first floor. And the stairway was like an open stairway. It was open on both sides. There was no walls or anything around the stairs. So we were in the basement, and we were just kind of getting ready to go back upstairs. And so we turned to the stairway to go upstairs, and we saw this figure walking along the side of the stairs. Just like he's walking towards the bottom of the stairs, like he's going to go up the stairs to the first floor, which is where we were planning to go ourselves. So we just kind of froze when we saw this. We both saw it, so it wasn't like just one of our imaginations. Like, we both saw it. And it was light. The lights were on. It was full light. It wasn't in the dim shadows or anything like that. I still remember it to this day. I mean, we're talking probably the 1985, 86 around there. But I still remember it to this day as clearly as ever. It's definitely a male figure. He's wearing blue jeans and a blue plaid button-down shirt, like a flannel shirt tucked in. Kind of a big, kind of husky man, kind of muscular. And he's just kind of steadily walking towards the bottom stair. But the interesting thing is, I don't remember him having a head. And I remember everything about him, but having no head. And I've tried to talk to my sister about it since. She had, agreed with me that she saw the ghost, but she's never been able to talk about the details since then. Even as an adult and stuff, she won't talk about it. But it scared us so bad, that we just ran up the stairs next to this thing and locked the door behind us, and we were just hysterical until my parents got home from work a few hours later. We were just shaking and crying and stuff, and we were pretty young, but it scared the daylights out of both of us. And ever since we saw that, it was, there's no doubt that there's something there, even if my mother didn't acknowledge it. So it wasn't a terribly bad thing when we ended up moving 10 years later. Although I hated to leave that environment because it was beautiful living on 50 acres of land and being out in the country. I was not sad to get out of that house because it always scared me really bad. So if anybody wants to go ahead and comment, ask me any questions, I'll answer everything the best I can. If anybody wants to share their own experiences, feel free to leave comments, and I'll respond to them. I've had a lot of other experiences throughout my life. It just seems like this stuff follows me, and that happens from everything that I've seen and been told. That spirits are kind of connected to certain people that they find are in tune to them. So generally, if you've had these experiences, you'll continue to have them throughout your life. It's kind of like, like attracts like, sort of like that. My wife has also had like a lot of experiences throughout her life, things that have followed her. And, as an adult, I've had a lot of things happen as well. I guess I can share some more of those things. When I moved to Buffalo here, 2008, I moved to this apartment on Breckenridge Street. Lived there for a few years before moving to the Lovejoy area. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with that area. Breckenridge is right near Elmwood Village and everything. They have these, old houses lined up and down that street, like a lot of places in Buffalo. At the time we moved in there, we rented the first floor of the house. And the second floor, it had 2 floors. The second floor was vacant. Stayed pretty much vacant for the whole time we were there, for the years we were there. It was only like before we moved for a little while that they finally rented that out, but it just stood vacant for years. So we were the only ones in the house on that first floor. And that house it had this really like cruddy basement. We never went in and stuff. We ended up doing our laundry like at a laundromat because this basement was just foul. So we never went down in it. But the first floor just had like 2 bedrooms, a living room, a dining room, a kitchen, a bathroom. And I had 1 bedroom. My wife had another bedroom. And she told me about one night that she'd seen a figure standing at the foot of her bed. And that really scared her. I never per se saw anything in the house, but I heard things and sensed some things. My wife also had another experience in a house where she was home, and I had just left to go run some errands. So I walked out the door, and about 5-10 minutes later, she calls me on the phone, and she's like, "Hey, Bobby, what are you doing home so fast? I thought you were going to run some errands." I was like, "I'm not home. I'm blocks and blocks away. I haven't come home." And she said, "Oh, because I heard you come in." I was like, "I didn't come in. I haven't been back." So when I got home later, we talked about it, and after I'd left, maybe about 10 minutes later or so, she heard the front door open and close, and then there's a stairway that goes to the upstairs, outside of our front door, but it shares a wall, so you can hear anybody coming and going really clearly. But nobody, lived up there, like I said. So she heard the door close, and she heard somebody walking up the stairs, really firmly, like a heavy male footstep. And you heard it very clearly, but of course there's nobody up there. So there was that, which we could never explain. And then the other things was that many times we had heard things upstairs when we were downstairs in our apartment. Heard footsteps at different times. Also heard things like slamming, like being dropped to the floor, or things being dragged across the floor. And, like I said, nobody was up there. And it was definitely a lot heavier than any kind of mouse or rat. So those are things we couldn't explain in that house. And so we stayed there for a while, and then we moved to this place on Davy Street. And it was actually a house. We got to rent an entire house on Davy Street. Which was nice. It was really nice having a house. It wasn't big, but it was still nice not having to share a house and have it all to yourself. When we lived there, I remember a couple of things happening at that place. My wife she got tapped on the shoulder. I was there too. I was in the same room with her when it happened, and she was just standing in the middle of the room, and she turned really quickly, she definitely felt it right then, and she told me, that she just got tapped on the shoulder. There's a couple other instances too where we heard our names called when we weren't saying anything, or even sometimes not even home, and she would hear a voice like me calling her name, or I would hear her voice, and we weren't even necessarily home at the same time. But that's also something that this is not entirely unheard of in hauntings and places where ghosts are present. We had some other stuff that happened before that, before we came to Buffalo. And I guess I'll go into it. And give you a little explanation about that. Let's see, after we got married, 2006, we moved to the Poconos for a little while. The Poconos Mountain in Pennsylvania. We were living in Jersey City, New Jersey at the time, and we were just looking to get a place. I was living in this apartment on Central Avenue in Jersey City Heights. He was living with her parents, so we just wanted to get a place. And we loved that area. Living in the country, and the Poconos are beautiful, so we went out there and we happened to find some places that were really affordable. And in particular, there was this house it was on the top of one of the large hills there, really secluded. It has this big, long, winding gravel road leading up to the top. A few neighbors they're up there, but not very close. This place was it's like a ranch style house. I mean, essentially, I think it was a double wide trailer that had been built off of and expanded. They put this big porch that ran the entire length of the place, but it was not that big, and we only had one floor. But it did have a detached garage also. So it was big enough for us. We didn't have a lot at the time. So we moved up there thinking, we're going to be here for a long time and everything. I do remember the days, this may have been the night before we moved up. It's definitely maybe a few days before. I had a nightmare. I was sleeping over. We were sleeping over at one of our friends' houses. I had this nightmare where I'd seen myself and my body hanging from a rafter in the garage. And of course, it was really troubling in that, you don't often dream of your own demise. But, I saw this very clearly, and at the time I felt it was kind of an omen. So I told her about it. Like as soon as I woke up, I mean, I woke up from the nightmare, and I told her that I had this nightmare, and I told her what it was and stuff, and she just kind of, she believed me, of course, but she didn't think it was enough to not move up there. We had already put on deposit, it was all set. So, we talked about it, and she just kind of was like, we got to go do this, we can't get out of it now. So I agreed, and we ended up moving up there. And very early on, it didn't take very long, excuse me, but he started noticing little weird things happening that seemed to be at first centered around that garage. Now, this is a garage I clearly saw in my nightmare. Ever since we moved in there, that garage never felt comfortable. We had some music equipment set up in that garage, and we tried to go out there and play around, but it always felt like somebody was behind you or watching you, and you're always kind of looking over your shoulder, and never really could get comfortable out there. So we ended up barely using it at all, because it just was not a good feeling, good vibe in that garage. And then we started noticing that the door would lock and unlock by itself. We would go out there when we had the door unlocked, and we'd go out there and find it locked. Or the opposite, we'd lock the door, go back, sometime later find it unlocked. It would just go back and forth like that. So that was really kind of unsettling to begin with. Then we started having stuff happen in the house, and my wife especially, we started seeing little shadow people, little shadow figures in the corners and stuff, moving around at different parts of the house. My wife, I wasn't there to witness this. She told me about this. She saw a box of cat litter levitate off the floor. One of those big heavy ones too, the 10-pound box of litter or something. Said she actually saw the thing levitate. And the cats, we had 4 or 5 cats at the time, and they would constantly be looking weirdly at stuff, places in the house where nothing was happening, or there was nothing, and they'd look all focused and stuff, and then sometimes they'd get scared and run away. They're just acting really weird. They'd hiss sometimes at stuff. Then one night, we were sleeping. We heard this big commotion, and the cat's just going crazy out in the living room. So we woke up, and we went out to the living room, and the whole screen was tore up on the. It was on the living room screen that faced out to the porch. It was all tore up. But when we went to investigate it, there was a couple of things. Number one, we couldn't see any signs of any animal that had done it. The ground was fairly soft from rains and stuff, but we looked at the steps coming off the porch and didn't see any footprints or anything. Didn't see any hair caught in the screen from claws or anything. And the weird thing was that the screen seemed to be the edges of the screen that had been frayed from whatever happened seemed to be pushing outside, not in. So that really left us kind of very unsettled after that as well. the other stuff that started happening was, I mentioned before in the other house how we would hear our names said when we weren't around. Well, that was happening there as well. We hear our names called out from different rooms. When either we weren't there, or we were like in the same room or something. And then this other thing happened, which is really unexplainable. Whenever I would come back from being out, I would take my boots off, like on the porch, as I'm coming in and bring them in, and I always like set them in the bedroom, because you don't leave in the country. You don't leave your footwear outside, because you wake up in the morning and you got all kinds of critters inside your boots. So, country folk know never to leave your boots sitting outside. So I never did that. And I always made a point always to bring them in. Because I grew up in the country. I know that lesson well. So this one night, I'm wake up in the morning and I go to grab my boots and they're not there. And so I'm looking around and I can't find them anywhere. And I knew that they were the same place I always put them in the bedroom. So my wife, I asked my wife, and she said, yeah, she saw me take them off, the night before, like always. So we're looking around and stuff, and I ended up just getting another pair from the closet or something because we can't find them at all. And then as we're leaving, to go to work, walk out, and these boots are sitting on the porch, right next to one another, right there on the porch. And I could not explain that. Still can't explain that to this day. There's no reason why they should have been out there. No reason how they could have got out there from the bedroom to there overnight on their own. But, a lot of times with supernatural, paranormal things going on, hauntings, whatever, you're going to find things that are just inexplicable. That things really de-escalated in that place, and I started getting more nightmares. We started experiencing some real kind of demonic stuff going on. And long story short, we stayed there 6 months, and then we basically, everything that was going on in the house ended up literally breaking us up. We actually did split up after about 5 months or so, but we continued living there because we wanted to honor the lease we had. We had a year lease we signed, but things started getting worse and worse, and even so after 6 months, we were literally kind of becoming afraid for our own safety. So we left, broke the lease, and just got the hell out of there. And went back to Jersey City. But the thing was that once we put some distance between us and that house, a lot of that stuff between us that had broken us up just kind of went away, and we realized that all this stuff was totally irrational, and it was connected to that house. So we ended up reconciling and getting back together, but we never did set foot in that house again, and we'd actually lost I think we definitely lost our down payment and stuff in that house, but we needed to get out of there when we did. Things were turning ugly, and I really think that our safety was in jeopardy if we'd stayed much longer. But that's the kind of thing can happen. I don't know how many of you out there have had any kind of experiences similar to that or in that same vein. I know a lot of people who do go through like hauntings are really deeply affected by it. And it really changes your whole perspective on things. Even if like you ascribe to being a non-believer in the paranormal or ghosts and stuff, like, you know, you put through things like that defy explanation, and you can't help but acknowledge that there's something, you know, things there that can't be explained. So that's most of the story. There's a few other things, but I'll kind of leave it at that, I guess. I also, you know, I'm also a guy who's into all kinds of other aspects of the supernatural. I'll save the other stuff for another show. And eventually I'll probably do like a cryptid show, talk about Bigfoot and stuff like that. But I'll just say this now. I had, you know, like a lot of people I saw in search of with Leonard Nimoy when I was a kid, and had a huge impact on me. But even more than that, I had an aunt and uncle who lived near Spokane, Washington. And I remember when I was a kid, them coming out to visit us. And this had to be the early 1980s. And they told us, the family, stories about that they had seen on numerous occasions, either one Bigfoot or numerous Bigfoots come out of the forest and scavenge through their trash. And they said it perfectly, like with a straight face. It wasn't them trying to scare us or tell a tall tale or stuff. They were totally serious. And they didn't just tell us kids. I mean, they were telling the whole family, my parents as well. And just relaying the facts, you know, like, you know, straight as an arrow. So I never doubted, you know, what they told us. And if my interest wasn't piqued already in Bigfoot, it certainly was after that. So I've spent a lot of my life researching the subject. I actually went to a cryptid conference with my buddy Dave last fall in Ohio, and that was really interesting because I actually got to meet many of the authors of books that I had read on the subject, and talk to them. And I get to talk to a few experts and talk about certain individual cases and things and sightings, and it was just really fascinating. And some of them I've connected with and made friends with on Facebook, like to this day. So yeah, the Bigfoot thing, I'm big into that. Certainly a big believer. I have a lot of stuff to share on that subject, but I'll make that a show in itself. I'm not such a big like Loch Ness Monster guy. That's kind of stretching it for me. I haven't seen enough evidence of Loch Ness Monster to really convince me. I really have my doubts about that. The evidence just doesn't hold up for me on that. But you know, as I'll explain, the evidence is definitely there for Bigfoot, and it's convinced me. So I don't know, some of the other cryptids. I mean, there's like so many cryptids out there. Just from all different kinds of Bigfoot and things related to that. You know, the Yeti, the skunk ape, Momo, the Grassman, all these different pseudo Bigfoot monsters around, but they all kind of fall in the same umbrella. But there's also some really like odd ones out there, some like lizard men. There's like the rake. There's you have the dogmen and the Beast of Bray Road, which I mentioned earlier, which that kind of falls in the whole dogman thing. And there's numerous ones of those that they may be called different things, but they still fall under the same kind of umbrella throughout the whole country. There's also the shapeshifters. I know a lot of people ascribe to the chupacabra, but that's another one I just haven't seen enough to really convince me on that. It could be just like a mangy animal, a really mangy chihuahua or something, or I don't know. It just doesn't hold up for me. I'm also a big UFO guy. When the whistleblowers spoke at the congressional hearing last summer, I sat and watched the live broadcast, all 3.5, 4 hours of it, and was fascinated by every word. I also I'm not a big conspiracy guy across the board. I mean, there are some that I'll find. There's some credible stuff too, but I'm not just a conspiracy guy that's going to buy into every conspiracy because it's a conspiracy. You really have to convince me. Go ahead and give me some evidence, show me something. But I'm just not going to buy into every conspiracy because it's a conspiracy. There's, of course, the big one. Two of the biggest conspiracies, of course, the JFK assassination. But I think everybody basically by now pretty much believes that there was a conspiracy there. I think just about everybody's admitting it now, even the most credible people are admitting that that there's something there to that. And that the government is covering up aspects of that. There's the one that I've been hearing more and more about lately that I'm curious about, but I'm not decided either way, is not just the moon landing being hoaxed, but this idea that there are things on the dark side of the moon that are being hidden from us. There might be something there to that too. It seems very odd to me. If you want to frame it in any kind of logic, it kind of defies logic, the fact that we are sending all these making all these trips to the moon around the first moon landing, and then all of a sudden nothing, we never went back. And we're sending vehicles across space to other planets and stuff, but never return to the moon. Why is that? It just seems odd. And another fact too is that we never really seen all parts of the moon. There's that dark side of the moon which has never really been explored. And even when the astronauts went there, they only went to a small portion of the moon, and they photographed that and studied that and collected samples and everything, but they didn't go explore all of the moon. Just a very small part of it. So why, if we can go to the moon so easily, and this was like over 50 years ago, with the technology that's advanced in 50 years, we could go back to the moon and do so much more than we did in 1969, but we haven't. Like, why is that? There has to be a reason. Either they're going to the moon clandestinely and not telling us, which is a possibility, or they're avoiding it for some reason that they're not telling us. But it just defies logic that we would never go back again. And then you start hearing all these like rumors about things on the moon that we're not supposed to know about or find. Alien bases, structures like man-made or alien-made structures on the moon. Underground bases or caverns and stuff where alien life may be hiding. And the dark side of the moon, obviously, where things may be sitting that we can't see or are not allowed to see. So there could be something to those. I'm not dismissing that, any of those rumors or allegations outright. I think some of them make very good sense, some of the arguments. And I think there's a lot there that could easily be hidden from the public. And very easily. And if you know our government, and that they have a lot of secrets, I wouldn't put them past, that secret. The other thing too is Antarctica. I don't know if people have heard these theories and stuff about Antarctica. There's a large section of Antarctica that's like a no-fly zone that our military protects and won't let anybody near. But they've never really given an explanation why that is and what's so sensitive about areas of Antarctica. Why? There's a lot of theories about something there that back 100 years ago or more, there was these writers that were writing about hollow earth theories. I believe Gerald Gardner was one who's really big. But there's books written, and people really listened to this. This was before a lot of the exploration down there. But they had written about these theories about how hollow earth, and that there's entry points throughout parts of like the world. And one of the big entry points was at each of the poles, Antarctica and Antarctica. And these were really explorers with a lot of credibility and stuff that were talking about this and writing about these possibilities. And there was a whole group of hollow earth believers that stemmed out of these, that still to this day there's even a section of hollow earth believers, even after the earth was proven flat, and there's still people that don't ascribe to that. So, and now today with, like I said, with Antarctica being, off limits, large parts of it being off limits, people are going back and connecting the dots between the hollow earth advocates and what's going on today. Because, the public can't go there, can't fly over there. It's just the military is protecting something and nobody knows what it is, though. So that's fascinating. A lot of these things I just find so fascinating. I think it's important to have an open mind about everything, especially as you get older. It's easy to become really jaded and lose your imagination and your sense of mystery and wonder. I think even though like a lot of these things maybe just fall into like fantasy, I mean, I think it's still important to maintain that open mind, because you never know, the weirdest things can become reality, become truth. You just never know. And if you start discounting things, then you eliminate the possibilities as well. So I encourage everybody to keep an open mind about everything paranormal, supernatural. But, definitely look for facts, look for things that, that can prove either way, but keep an open mind at the same time. Yeah, I certainly do. So I just got a little bit of time left. I'm going to keep doing a podcast, try to do it about twice a month. And not sure yet what my next topic will be. I'll try to find something within the next couple weeks, something that can be informative and entertaining at the same time. I may also have some guests on as well from time to time. I've been really busy with my with music, with the bands I'm involved with my singing. I got, just so everybody knows, a little self-promotion here. Tomorrow, July 4th, I'll be playing at Milky's. I think we go on at 10 o'clock with my band, Mini Marching Machine. So that'll be tomorrow. And I know there's some more gigs coming up soon, but I don't have the calendar in front of me. I just know tomorrow's gig. Also on a week from Friday, June or July, we're in July 11th, at Nietzsche's. It's going to be a great show. Jupiter Trolley, Rom-Com Victims, The Rain Lamps, and Orange Dog Club. We're going to be playing, and also there's going to be a speaker that's going to speak for about 10 minutes or so about suicide prevention and organization that she's a part of. That's kind of wish I could just remember that. I believe it's. I can't believe I can't think of this. I want to plug you so bad, but I can't think of this. All right. I'm so sorry, Chelsea. I can't. My mind is going blank here. I don't want to misquote the name of. Oh wait, here we go. Help I'm Alive. That's what it is. Help I'm Alive. It's a suicide prevention organization run by and Dr. Chelsea Rose is an advocate of the organization. She's a licensed psychologist, and she's going to speak about the organization and say a few words about suicide prevention at the Nietzsche show right before Jupiter Trolley goes on. We're going to give her a little time to do that. So I encourage everybody to come out to that show and come out tomorrow to Milky's to see Mini Marching Machine play. Big July 4th. It's going to be fun. Hope everybody has a good time tomorrow. Has a barbecue, sees a little fireworks, has a good time with friends and family. And I'll be seeing you soon. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Thanks for being a part of my second podcast here. And I'll be seeing you soon. Take care.